You wake not to an alarm but to a deep resonant silence that feels wrong, a void where the hum of your own thoughts should be. The concepts of morning and day have no labels. There is only the light hurting your eyes and a dull hunger in your stomach. You try to form a simple thought, to say your own name inside your head, but you grasp at nothing. A mental static that is profoundly disorienting. Instincts you never knew you had pushed to the surface. A raw, animal awareness of your surroundings that is both sharp and utterly meaningless. You look at your hands, turning them over, expecting a familiar story to be written there, but they are just objects, tools without a history. A sound escapes your throat, a guttural, panicked exhale that means nothing, not even to you. It is just noise in the crushing quiet. The room you are in is familiar yet alien. Its purpose and the story of the objects within it lost to you, just shapes and textures. A face, a loved one's face enters your vision, their eyes wide with the same primal confusion, the same silent scream you feel inside. You reach for them, not with a word of comfort, but with a clumsy, desperate touch. A connection that is purely physical and terrifyingly limited. This is your reality now. A present tense existence stripped of context, of story, of the very thing that built the world you thought you knew. You stand, movements clumsy and unguided by internal instruction, driven purely by the need to alleviate the hunger gnawing at you. Others are moving too, a small group of faces you recognize but whose names are ghosts, their eyes reflecting your own blank panic. One figure points toward the trees, a jerky, urgent motion that conveys a general direction but no specific intent or objective. A grunt comes from another, a low, rough sound that might mean food or danger or follow. Its ambiguity is utterly frustrating. You try to respond, to coordinate, but your throat produces only a strained hum, a failed engine of communication that dies in the air. Your hands rise, mimicking the pointing gesture, then move in a vague, circular motion that means absolutely nothing to anyone, including yourself. The group's movement is a stuttering, inefficient shuffle, a collection of individuals reacting to cues, not a unit working toward a shared goal. You notice the subtle shift in body tension in the person next to you, a tightening of the shoulders that you instinctively read as alarm. You follow their wide-eyed gaze to the brush, but see nothing, the warning incomplete, a sentence forever left unfinished and useless. This is communication now, a chaotic ballet of misinterpreted gestures and animal noises, a game of charades with the highest stakes imaginable. The group's movement into the tree line is not a coordinated hunt, but a desperate, scattered foraging, each person alone in a crowd. You see a root that looks vaguely like a tuber from a half-remembered life, but the knowledge of its name or edibility is gone. You dig at the earth with your hands, the action feeling both instinctual and utterly pointless without a goal to define it. Another person snatches a grub from a rotten log and eats it without hesitation, driven by a base hunger that overrides all caution. You mimic them, scraping at the bark, your fingers clumsy and ineffective, the technique for finding food lost to the silent void. A sudden, sharp cry, not a word but a pure sound of alarm, rips through the air and everyone freezes in place, heads snapping up. Your eyes scan the dappled shadows, heart hammering, but you see no source, no predator, only the fearful whites of others' eyes. The cry fades, leaving a thicker, more paralyzing silence in its wake, the false alarm having achieved nothing but shared, undirected panic. The moment passes, and the futile digging resumes. The group's energy dissipated, any semblance of purpose shattered by the incident. You are not hunters providing for a tribe. You are merely animals grazing in the same field, connected by fear but divided by silence. The frustration builds inside your skull, a pressure with no release valve, a scream with no sound, a thought with no structure. You clutch your head, trying to force it, to find the ghost of a word, any word to label the terrifying emptiness you feel. You remember the concept of name, a tag for things, but when you look at a tree, only its image flashes, devoid of its identifier. The mental effort is exhausting, like trying to lift a weight with a phantom limb. The muscle for language is atrophied, gone. You look at your hands again, and the ghost of a memory surfaces, a flicker of someone showing you how to tie a knot. But the steps are lost, the purpose forgotten. The knowledge is a silent movie with the captions burned away, leaving only confusing images. This is the true prison, not the silent world around you, but the silent world within your own mind, the library with all the books blank. You try to grunt, to point, to assign a sound to the tree, but the connection between the object and the signifier is irrevocably broken. The attempt leaves you more isolated than before, highlighting the profound chasm between your consciousness and your ability to express it. You are a sentient being trapped in a cage of its own making, aware of the lock but unable to conceive of, much less find, the key. The group's return to the clearing is a slow, defeated procession, the hollow ache of hunger now compounded by a deeper exhaustion. An older figure, whose face is etched with lines of forgotten experience, moves toward the cold black circle of a fire pit. They kneel, arranging stones and old ash with a reverence that suggests a ghost of a memory, a ritual without understanding. Others watch, their eyes blank, seeing the actions but unable to access the collective knowledge those actions once represented. The elder picks up two rocks, striking them together with a practiced motion that feels inherited but purposeless. A spark flies, a tiny, fleeting star against the twilight, and a collective, sharp intake of breath is the only commentary. But the spark dies on the stone, and the motion is repeated again and again, a futile pantomime of a skill that has evaporated. The knowledge of tinder, of airflow, of nurturing a fledgling flame, all of it is locked away in a vault with no combination. The rocks are eventually dropped in frustration, the silent lesson a complete failure, the darkness beginning to press in around the group. This is how knowledge dies, not with a bang, but with the soft, final sigh of a spark that never catches, a skill untaught and lost forever. A child, too young to have known the old world, stumbles and skins its knee on a sharp rock, a common childhood mishap. It opens its mouth, face contorting in the universal prelude to a cry, but what emerges is a thin, confused whimper, not a call for mother. The child's parent rushes over, their own face a mask of panic, hands fluttering uselessly, desperate to soothe but unable to ask, "Where does it hurt?" They can only gather the child, rocking back and forth, a physical comfort that feels hollow without the whispered words that make pain bearable. You watch, and you understand that without language, comfort is reduced to its most basic, animal form. It is presence, but it is not understanding. The child's tears eventually slow, not from consolation, but from exhaustion, the confusion of the pain mingling with the confusion of the silence. The parent cannot promise that it will be okay, cannot tell a story to distract, cannot even name the injury. It is just a red smear and a silent sob. The bond between them is visceral, built on touch and scent, but it lacks the layers of shared meaning that language once wove around it. This is how relationships fray, not through conflict, but through an inability to build anything more complex than instinctual attachment. You look away. The scene a quiet tragedy underscoring that the deepest human connections have been severed at the root. The largest among you, a figure whose presence was once perhaps genial, now moves with a different kind of purpose, a blunt, physical assertion. Their communication is no longer a request or a suggestion. It is a shove to get to the front of the water source, a glare that clears ice. Disputes over a scrap of food or a favored resting spot are no longer mediated. They are ended by a show of force, a guttural threat. You feel the shift in the group's dynamic, the subtle realignment around raw power, because it is the only law that requires no translation. There are no debates, no persuasions, no clever arguments. There is only the hierarchy of strength and the fear it instills. The once shared glances of confusion now carry a new edge of suspicion and submission, a silent acknowledgement of this new, brutal order. You find yourself stepping aside without thinking, your body reacting to the unspoken command of a clenched fist or a set jaw. Cooperation, what little there was, frays into mere tolerance, a calculation of who can be pushed and who must be avoided. This is the politics of silence. Not a democracy, not a meritocracy, but a simple, stark dictatorship of the physically dominant. The community you vaguely remember shatters, replaced by a loose collection of individuals governed by the primitive rule of might makes right. Your existence contracts to the immediate sensory input, the gnawing in your stomach, the chill of the wind, the ache in your muscles from constant vigilance. The concept of tomorrow is an abstract ghost, a shape you can almost see but cannot grasp or define. There is only the perpetual grinding now. You cannot reminisce about a better past, for the past is a fog of unlabeled images and emotions with no narrative to bind them together. You cannot plan for a future, for planning requires the mental architecture of sequence and consequence, a framework that has collapsed. Your mind, once a theater of complex thought, is now a bare stage where only the most urgent sensations are allowed to perform. You watch the sun track across the sky, but it signifies nothing beyond light and then dark, heat and then cold, a cycle without meaning. Hunger is not a problem to be solved for the next day. It is a raw, present-tense agony that demands immediate, futile action. This eternal present is a profound kind of poverty, stripping you of history and ambition, leaving only a reactive animal in its wake. You are trapped in a single, endless moment, a prisoner of the immediate, with no key made of words to unlock the doors of time. The silence outside is now matched by a deeper silence within, the quiet of a mind that has nowhere to go and nothing to say to itself. You are sharpening a stick against a rock, a mindless, repetitive motion when you see it, a flicker of movement in the distant tree line. It's larger than a person, a shadow with weight and purpose, moving against the wind, a predator, drawn by the scent of your helpless group. Your body floods with adrenaline, your muscles coiling, a silent scream building in your chest that has no outlet, no way to become a warning. You look frantically at the others, but they are engrossed in their own futile tasks, oblivious to the death approaching from the forest. You wave your arms, a frantic, jerky dance of panic, but the gestures are meaningless. One person looks up, annoyed, then looks away. You try to grunt to force a sound of alarm, but it comes out as a strained cough, dismissed as nothing by those who hear it. The shadow moves closer, its form resolving into something muscular and low to the ground, and your panic becomes a cold, paralyzing terror. This is the ultimate failure of your silence. You can see the threat, you understand the consequences, but you are utterly powerless to convey it. You are alone in your knowledge, a sentinel screaming on a frequency no one else can hear, as the danger closes the final few yards. The only warning that will be given is the attack itself, the first cry of pain, which will come too late for anyone to react or flee. The attack is a silent explosion of violence, a whirlwind of teeth and claws that hits the group with no more warning than a sudden storm. The first victim doesn't even cry out. The sound is a wet, choked gurgle that is horrifyingly intimate, not an alert for others. Panic erupts, but it is a silent, chaotic scrambling, a mass of bodies moving in blind terror without direction or coordination. You see the predator clearly now, a powerful, sleek form moving with lethal efficiency, its actions a language of pure, uncomplicated purpose. There is no strategy in the defense, only a base instinct to flee, which creates a bottleneck of bodies, making them easier targets. You are frozen for a moment, witnessing the brutal efficiency of nature unchecked by the collective planning that once kept it at bay. This is the consequence of your silence. The predator speaks the only language left, the language of force, and it is fluent. You finally break from your stupor, turning to run. But your flight is just another part of the chaos, not an escape, just motion. The sounds are not screams of warning, but the raw, animal sounds of pain and fear, the universal syntax of suffering that requires no translation. The attack ends as swiftly as it began, the predator vanishing back into the trees, leaving behind the wounded and a deeper, more profound silence. In the days that follow, a change manifests not in speech but in mark-making, fingers tracing patterns in the dirt, smearing ash on stone. These are not representations of the world, but frantic, abstract scratches, the internal storm of fear and loss given a physical, silent outlet. You watch as one person repeatedly draws a circle with a jagged line through it, over and over, a symbol whose meaning is private and agonizing. Another presses a hand into wet clay, staring at the impression as if trying to capture the ghost of a presence, to prove they were here. This is not art for communication. It is art as a pressure valve, a desperate attempt to externalize what cannot be contained within the silent mind. You find yourself doing it, your own fingers moving without conscious thought, carving lines into a soft tree trunk, a record of a feeling without a name. The marks are poignant and futile, like tears that no one sees, a diary written in a code that even the author cannot decipher. They are artifacts of a consciousness screaming to be heard, to leave any proof that it existed beyond the immediate, consuming present. The group moves on, and the rain washes the marks away. The mud swallows the handprint, the silent expressions erased as if they never were. The urge to create remains, a deep, wordless ache to signify, but the ability to create meaning has been lost along with the words themselves. The tension that has been simmering since the rise of the strongman finally boils over, sparked by the most basic of needs, a handful of berries. Two figures both reach for the same cluster on a bush, their hands snapping out with the instinctual speed of hunger. Their eyes meet, not with negotiation, but with a flash of pure, unmediated territoriality. A challenge without words. One shoves the other, a hard, unambiguous push that is the only vocabulary left for mine. The shoved one stumbles back, and the response is not words of protest, but a raw, guttural snarl, the prelude to violence. They crash together, a tangle of limbs and silent, furious effort, each trying to dominate through sheer physical force. The fight is clumsy, brutal, and inefficient. Without the concept of strategy or the ability to call for help, it is just two animals scrapping. You watch, and you see the profound absurdity of it. A conflict over food that will likely waste more energy than the berries could provide. The strongman watches too, not to mediate, but to assess the new challenge to their authority, their expression one of cold calculation. The fight ends not with a resolution, but with exhaustion. One crawls away, the other takes the berries, and the silence is now thick with new, unspoken animosity. The isolation becomes a physical weight, a hollow ache in your chest that has no name, no way to be shared or soothed by another. You are surrounded by others, yet you are profoundly alone, locked in a private world of sensation and fear with no key to let anyone in. Your internal monologue is a silent, chaotic storm of images and emotions, fear of the predator, hunger, cold, but they are just raw data, unprocessed. You try to catch someone's eye to forge a connection through a shared glance, but their eyes are just as vacant, their inner worlds just as inaccessible. The loneliness is not about being physically apart. It is the agony of being mentally and emotionally marooned, a universe of one. You remember, in a ghostly way, the comfort of a shared joke, the relief of a whispered worry, concepts that now feel like myths from another species. The urge to express this loneliness is itself a torment, a thought that screams to be voiced but dies at the lips, adding to the very isolation it describes. You sit close to others for warmth, but the contact is purely thermodynamic. It provides no emotional heat, no sense of shared humanity. This is the ultimate poverty of a world without language, the destruction of the shared inner space where empathy and understanding are born. You are a ghost among ghosts, each of you haunting the same space but unable to acknowledge, much less comfort, the others. The decision to leave is not discussed. It is a slow, silent unraveling, a collective giving up on the fiction of being a group. One morning, a family unit simply isn't there anymore, vanished into the woods without a sound, their absence a louder statement than any farewell. Another small group leaves a day later, their departure noted only by the slight increase of space around the dwindling fire pit. There is no ceremony, no shared grief. Their absence is just another emptiness in a world already defined by void. You watch them go, and you understand their reasoning perfectly without a single word being exchanged. Together, you are targets. Apart, you might survive. The strongman's domain shrinks, but their authority seems to grow more desperate and brittle over the fewer who remain. You yourself feel the pull to leave, the instinct to walk away from the tense, silent hierarchy and take your chances with the silent wilderness. This is the final failure of community. Not a dramatic collapse, but a quiet, gradual dissipation, like mist burning off under a cold sun. The bonds that once held you together were woven from language, and without it, the social fabric has frayed into individual, isolated threads. You are left with a handful of others, but you are essentially alone. The shared project of survival now reduced to a solitary, desperate struggle. While digging for edible roots, your fingers brush against something cold, smooth, and unnaturally shaped, not a stone or wood. You pull it from the earth, a curved fragment of hardened black material, its edge honed to a sharpness that nature never achieves. Turning it over, you see a series of precise, parallel lines etched into its surface, a pattern of stunning intentionality and order. Your mind reels, not with recognition, but with a dizzying sense of almost knowing, like a name on the tip of a tongue that doesn't exist. This object is a fossil of a different kind, not of a creature, but of a mind. A thought made solid, a message from a world you cannot access. You show it to another, pointing at the marks, but they only see a sharp thing, a tool, and try to take it from you to use. The meaning is lost on them. They cannot see the ghost in the machine, the evidence of a complexity that your existence has utterly abandoned. You clutch the artifact, not as a tool, but as a relic, a heartbreaking clue to a puzzle you don't even know how to begin to solve. It is proof that something more was possible, a glimpse of a ladder that you can see but cannot climb, its rungs made of forgotten words. The artifact becomes your secret, a silent testament to a grandeur that has been erased, making your own reality feel even more desolate and small. Your hearing, once dulled by the expectation of speech, now strains to interpret every rustle, every snap of a twig, every shift in the wind's tone. You learn to distinguish the harmless scuttle of a beetle from the cautious footfall of a predator, a skill born of desperate necessity. Your eyes, too, become sharper, reading the subtle language of the forest, bent grass, disturbed earth, the alarm calls of birds you cannot name. The world is no longer a place to be described, but a text to be decoded through pure survivalist observation, a continuous threat assessment. You notice the way others now flinch at sudden sounds, their bodies reacting to noise as pure information, unfiltered by calming words. A snapped branch isn't just a sound, it is a question mark that demands immediate physical investigation, a trigger for adrenaline. This hypervigilance is exhausting, a constant drain on your energy, but it is the only way to navigate a world where silence hides constant danger. You miss the comfort of explained sounds, the way a voice could turn a strange noise into just the wind or only a cat. Now, every sound is potentially lethal, and your senses are stretched taut, raw nerves exposed to a world that speaks only in warnings and threats. This is the new language you must learn. A vocabulary of fear, written in the grammar of instinct and parsed by a mind forever on edge. A low rhythmic sound begins, not from a person, but from the group's strongest. A deep, guttural hum repeated at a steady pounding interval. It is not a song, not a melody, but a pure sonic vibration, a beat that seems to synchronize with the frantic pounding of your own heart. Others join in, not in harmony, but in unison, their voices layering the same monotonous tone, creating a wall of sound that feels protective. This is not communication. It is anti-communication, a noise meant to drown out the terrifying silence and the fears it contains. The rhythm is an anchor in the formless void of the present, a way to mark time when words like minute or hour have no meaning. You find your own throat vibrating, adding your voice to the chorus, not because you understand, but because the collective vibration momentarily quiets the lonely storm inside. The strongman leads this ritual, their chest pounding, the sound a manifestation of their power, a way to bind the group through shared, primal vibration. For a short while, the rhythmic grunting creates a fragile sense of unity, a temporary illusion of purpose forged from shared fear, not shared understanding. But when the sound stops, the silence that rushes back in feels heavier, more profound, highlighting the emptiness it failed to truly fill. The grunts are not a beginning, but an end. The final, desperate substitute for the poetry, stories, and songs that will never be born. The group is gone now, dissolved into the indifferent wilderness, leaving you truly alone for the first time since the great silence began. Your existence narrows to a pinpoint of instinct. Find water, find food, find shelter, a relentless cycle without past or future to give it meaning. The artifact shard is still in your possession, a cold, smooth weight in your hand, a constant reminder of a complexity forever out of reach. You hold it up sometimes, tracing the etched lines, not with hope, but with a dull, aching wonder at the minds that made such a thing. You are the last repository of a dead civilization's memory, and you cannot read a single word of the book you carry. Your days are spent in silent ritual, the grinding repetition of survival, your mind a quiet engine of need, stripped of all but the most essential functions. You have not heard another human sound in what feels like an eternity. Your own breaths and heartbeats are the only rhythm left. You sometimes wonder if you are the last one, the final flicker of a consciousness that once dreamed of stars and now dreams only of water. This is the world without language, not a violent end, but a slow, quiet dimming, a descent into a solitary, wordless twilight. You are awake and breathing and alone, in a story with no teller and no audience, a tale reduced to its most basic, silent elements. The silence that remains is not merely an absence of sound, but the void where a universe once resided. We have journeyed together through this starkest of alternate realities, a world stripped of the very tool that allowed us to build everything we know. It is a world not of dramatic extinction, but of a slow, quiet fading, the dimming of consciousness, the unraveling of community, the loss of all that makes us more than just clever animals. Without language, we are ghosts in our own minds, trapped in an eternal present, unable to reach across the void to another soul. This thought experiment is a haunting reminder that our greatest technology is not the device in your hand, but the words on your tongue and the thoughts they shape. It is the foundation of love, of law, of science, and of story. So the next time you effortlessly share a joke, whisper a secret, or get lost in a book, consider the profound miracle you are participating in. What single word, if you could only choose one, would you fight to preserve from such a silence?